Okay, so I just was recording a video, and then by accident, I was gesturing, so I put my hand down, and I hit the space bar, and then stopped the recording. So, take two video. Welcome to videochannel.com, youtube.com///video. So basically, here let's just recap a little. Let's do a little recap for the people. So what's been going on in the channel? So basically, here's what happened. A couple days ago, I did a video where I featured Delibird, and I said, hey, look, Delibird pretty good, right? Delibird, and you know, people were like, wait, how did you do this? Like, Delibird shouldn't be any good. I had a lot of comments asking me to explain why Delibird was good and all this other stuff and how it was winning because it didn't make any sense. And then the next day, I think, I posted a video with Rufflet, where then I used Rufflet, and I only played 2 games with it. I did it in one take, and I won both of them as well. And so, yeah, it was like Rufflet was actually pretty convincing, right? And then over the weekend, I posted a video with Noctowl, right? Where Noctowl actually took us from Great Ball tier all the way up to number 5 in the ladder, and if we'd won, we probably almost definitely would have been number 1 in the ladder. So, basically 1 game away from being first in the ladder. And a lot of people have been asking, like, basically how, right? I see a lot of questions, a lot of comments being like, Wolf, you're amazing, like, you're so good, etc., etc. Yes, thank you. Yes, say nice things about me, please, thank you. But yeah, people are basically like, how are you doing this? We don't understand it. I was like, well, you know, I think this is something that my viewers might be interested in, because it's not, I am doing something specific, right? Like, this isn't random necessarily, like, that these Pokemon are able to win. So I thought I'd make a video and kind of open the topic up a little bit more broadly and talk about, how to use your favorite Pokemon, how to win with your favorite Pokemon, how to use underrated Pokemon. So I'm here in Cerebi, the website that I personally use for all my Pokemon stuff, or like not all of it, but a lot of it. Whenever I'm in the building phase, this is my main website, this is my go-to website. So let's start with Delibird. So there's a couple things you have to do when you are looking at how to use a Pokemon that isn't currently getting a lot of usage, right? So Delibird's a good example, right? So I opened up the page for, this is exactly what I did. I opened up the page for Delibird, and I started looking for things that could give it some kind of edge, right? Not necessarily that would make it the best ever, but that would give it, that I could use in some way, right? So the first thing I saw was, for a great place to look is abilities. So I said, okay, of these abilities, are any of these good? And Hustle jumped out at me, right? Because Hustle gives you a 1.5 times attack boost to your physical attacks at the cost of an 80%. Like, your accuracy decreases by 80%. If you use a 100% accurate move, you go down to 80% accuracy. And I was like, well, this ability is not very good, but here's a way that I can boost my physical damage output, right? And I said, okay, I can boost my physical damage output by 50%. Let's keep that in mind. That's a pretty good ability. And thanks to Dynamax, like, I really want this Pokemon to be good. I want this to be a star, so I can also double its health. Next thing I looked at was the stats, right? And if you look at Delibird's stats, they're trash. They're actually really, really bad. Its highest attack stat, or its highest stat, I know my head is blocking it, is its speed with 75. Its next highest stat is 65 with special attack, and attack is 55, and then we got a bunch of 45s. This is some of the worst stats I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, not fully evolved Pokemon have far better stats than this. Or many not fully evolved Pokemon have far better stats than this, and so I knew that I couldn't be relying too much on the stats. Next thing you want to look at is the move pool. Those are kind of like the 3. And the typing as well, right? The typing are important as well. But I was like, okay, let me go through the moves here, and I'm just going to skip some time with just at the max moves. And I saw, okay, wait a second. Delibird gets Seed Bomb, which turns into Max Overgrowth. It gets Max Steel Spike off of, I think, Iron Head. We can go back up here. Delibird doesn't have that many moves, so we can look at it. I saw Drill Peck, first thing that jumped out at me. It gets Ice moves, Ice Punch. Steel Wing is the one, actually, that only has 90% accuracy. Brick Break to boost attack. Icicle Spear, Bounce, Assurance, Brutal Swing, Agility. I'm just naming moves that have potential, right, that jump out at me. Baton Pass, Seed Bomb, Brave Bird, Gunk Shot, and Drill Run, right? And then the egg moves, Ice Shard, Fake Out, Freeze Dry, Destiny Bond, Counter, Aurora Veil, yeah, and Memento. Actually, most of these egg moves have some usage. So there's a couple different ways you could have built Delibird, right? So I could have had Delibird be a support set, right? And the reason I know that is because it gets a couple moves that jump out. Fake Out is a good one. Icy Wind, I believe it gets as well. Icy Wind, those are good support moves. And you could run like a Focus Dash set and have Fake Out, Icy Wind, and Memento, right? Or Destiny Bond as well. You could have Aurora Veil. You could use it to set up, the Aurora Veil, which is really good. I thought about Freeze Dry a little bit for water Pokemon like Dracovish and Gastrodon that are 4 times weak, and Gyarados. All those Pokemon are 4 times weak to Ice, or to Freeze Dry specifically. So, yeah, those are all things that were jumping out at me. So I looked at let's recap. I looked at the abilities. I looked at the stats. The stats were pretty bad, and then I saw the move pool there are some good support moves and there are some good coverage moves. So I said, okay, Delibird, going back to the ability, has not great stats. So I'm going to be relying a lot, I think, on its ability here. So I said, okay, why did they give it both Vital Spirit and Insomnia? What a waste. That's just insulting. So I was like, okay, I want to use this thing with Hustle, because I know that Hustle is a very good ability, right? And I know that it also has good coverage, and that's a combination that jumps out at me. And with Dynamaxing, I can double my health as well to make me still really frail. Doesn't have to, I mean, but like, maybe I can take a couple not very effective attacks. So then I looked at the coverage, and I said, okay, I obviously want Flying, because Max Flying with Brave Bird, which is somewhere in here, Brave Bird, is one of the best types, one of the best max move types in the game, because it boosts both your speed and your partner's speed. So I knew I wanted Brave Bird, I knew I wanted some kind of ice move, and then I chose 2 coverage moves. I think I ended up taking Seed Bomb and Brick Break, but Drill Run is a good option, Stealing is a good option, right? I just chose 4, right? And then I hopped online, and I tested a little bit, and I said, okay, this feels pretty good, right? And the thing about using Pokemon that you want to use that aren't necessarily common is oftentimes a Pokemon is not going to be common for a reason, right? A Pokemon might not be common like Delibird because, frankly, it's not very good, right? It doesn't have a lot going for it. It's pretty much forced to Dynamax, otherwise it can't do anything offensively, and it needs Hustle as well. And even with Hustle and a Life Orb and Dynamax, it's still mostly a gimmick, right? But Delibird is kind of an extreme example. There's a lot of Pokemon that aren't used as much, like Toxtricity, for example, who could be really good, but just aren't really seeing usage, right? Who have a lot more going for them than Delibird, right? And so, the thing you have to keep in mind is that, although when you're using a weird Pokemon, you may be trading off some optimality, right? You might be saying, okay, Delibird, there are Pokemon that could do what Delibird does way better, right? I think we all kind of understand that. However, Pokemon is not a game about optimality all of the time, because the thing is, what you lose in, let's say you could use Togekiss or Delibird in your team. What you lose by using Delibird, you can sometimes gain in surprise factor, right? There's something to be said for throwing your opponents off, and they have to react to things they've never seen before. Everyone knows how you have, well, no, that's not true, but like, people are more comfortable at the very least fighting against Togekiss because they've seen it, plenty of times, and they're familiar with both support and offensive Togekiss. Delibird, they have no idea what it's gonna do, right? This is something that I think is kind of underrated in Pokemon, that like, a Pokemon doesn't have to be optimal for it to win. It doesn't have to be optimal for it even to be good. It can be a smart call just because people aren't prepared for it. An extreme example is, like, think of a Pokemon like Xerneas, right? Think about it, or let's even say Togekiss in this format. Like, imagine Togekiss had 0 usage. Like, for some reason, everyone just thought it was bad, or people didn't realize Togekiss was allowed, and then somebody brought it to a tournament, right? They could probably pretty easily blow through everybody because it's such a good Pokemon. And then after that point, people would react to it and they would counter it, right? Underused Pokemon like Delibird have somewhat of a similar feature. Like, it's not necessarily the exact same thing, because, Delibird really is fighting against a lot, and it doesn't have as much going for it as Togekiss, but it's the same general principle, right? And so it's important to look at what a Pokemon can do well, and also consider that it doesn't, like, sometimes you might cheese people, right? Not everything has to work perfectly when your opponent has perfect knowledge, because in tournament or online, people aren't always going to have perfect knowledge, right? And I think there's something to be said for that. And actually, like, my first few, for a lot of my career, it's kind of decreased in recent years, but I was known for a while for using really wacky Pokemon, like Exeggutor and Emboar, and Regigigas, and I would always use weird Pokemon, and I think part of the reason I was successful is because people weren't prepared for the Pokemon I was using, right? I know Ashton Coxu has a similar journey where he started off using very weird Pokemon, like extremely, extremely, extremely weird Pokemon, and now he plays most of the time more standard. He'll still go back to his roots sometimes, but he definitely has started transitioning more towards standard than he used to at the very least. But it's hard to play against things that you're not prepared for. Looking at Rufflet, we can just run through another example. Rufflet, kind of similar thing. I already knew that Hustle was good because of Delibird, and I knew that Rufflet actually had higher base attack. So here we go, Hustle, once again, let's look at the stats. Rufflet actually has more bulk than Delibird, a good chunk more bulk. This is 25 higher HP and then 5 in the defenses. Slightly slower, but more base attack. Actually, what, almost 20 more base attack? So, same thing, I was like, alright, Rufflet, let's see what you can do. We got Brave Bird, we got Close Combat, we got Facade, or Body, I don't think it was Body Slam. Agility, does it get Baton Pass? Does not, Zen Headbutt, U-Turn, Rock Tomb, Retaliate. I actually really love Retaliate, it's a cool move, although it's not that good in doubles. I honestly don't remember what my last move was in Rowlet, now that I say it. Tailwind is a really big one. Or Rufflet, not Rowlet, I was confused. Rock Slide, did I miss one? What was my last move? I don't even remember. I honestly don't even remember. Phantasm? Probably not. Anyway, yeah, so like exact same thing. Stats, items, or stats, abilities, items as well is something you can consider. Like that's harder to go through because that's kind of more like you have to kind of already have a baseline knowledge in order to make that work. But yeah, I think that even still, like knowing the common items and even you know just looking around and saying, okay, like I've done this before. I've gone to on Cerebi, there's something called the item decks. And I've gone through manually and looked at every one of these and been like, am I missing anything, right? Is there anything that I'm missing that could be good, right? Data card 25, don't know what this is, but like, I've done this before, like literally, like to build for worlds and stuff, I've been like, there's gotta be a cool new item, like there's gotta be some item that I'm missing. I've just gone through every one of these. Yeah, so that's something you can do as well. And also, and the third thing I want to talk about is kind of the last Pokemon I want to talk about here is, let's see. What song is this? Glitch is so talented, dude. The music's all from Glitch C on my videos. Ah, Sonic. I knew I recognized it. Yeah, okay. Sometimes, like, okay, so Noctowl. So Noctowl is a Pokemon where, you know, you can look at the moves, you can look at the abilities, etc. You can see Insomnia as your best ability. It gets Hyper Beam and Hurricane. It gets, you know, Fire, Fairy, Psychic, Special Stabs. And honestly, in theory, Noctowl, like, just isn't good. Like, in theory, Noctowl is not good at all. But, like, sometimes the way that it works is, like, even if it's not good in theory, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's not good in practice, right? So, if you have a Pokemon you want to use, just, like, start throwing it on teams, right? If you really want to use Shuckle or Swalot or, like, well, I don't think Swalot's in the game, but, like, you know what I'm saying? Just, like, try it. Like, a lot of times you can, like, use a Pokemon and be like, huh, like, this set did this well and did this poorly. Here, let's see my hands. This well, this poorly, right? And then iterate and go from there. Like, you don't have to get it right in the first try, you know? So if there's a Pokemon you really want to use, like, if you want to be Medicham guy or, like, whatever, like, go for it. Like, no one's stopping you. It's Pokemon and, like, you know, you could, like, if you really want to win, you can use the most optimal Pokemon, sure. Then, like, there's nothing wrong with that, and, you know, but there's also something to be said for, you know, if you want to win, you can do it with your favorites. You just have to be smart about how you do it, right? Like, somebody could, in theory, win a tournament with Noctowl. I think I could, you know, in theory, potentially win a tournament with Noctowl. And if I can do it, you guys can do it too. 100%. So, yeah, a lot of it's just trial and error. I mean, obviously, I can do this a little faster because I've been playing for a while and I'm used to using weird stuff. But also, people will come up with stuff that I'm not expecting, right? And I've never seen before. And there's just like a lot of room for creativity in this game. So if you want to be creative, I say go for it, right? Like, don't feel like you have to use the same. Like, to be clear, there's nothing wrong with using meta Pokemon. There's nothing wrong with using the same Pokemon as everyone else, right? Because even in the way that you use those Pokemon, like, offensive Togekiss plays very differently than defensive Togekiss, for example. And so, I hate when people hate on people for using things that are standard, because there's always going to be a metagame, right? And if there wasn't a metagame, it wouldn't be a good game anyway, because there'd be too much volatility, in my opinion. But, so, no hate against people who use common stuff. I use common stuff, right? So that's definitely not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is, if you want to use something wacky, go for it. Like do it. Like, no one's stopping you, you know? And you can do it. And frankly, with Dynamax helps people who have a favorite Pokemon a lot, because, you know, there's, like, as you saw in some of my videos, like, if you hold off on Dynamax, get through their Dynamax, and then Dynamax one of your Pokemon, you can do really well with it. So, yeah, that's probably, I guess that's pretty much all I want to say. But yeah, like, you want to use Noctowl, like, Dynamax it, right? Like, a Pokemon get a lot better. A lot of bad Pokemon get a lot better when you double their HP and give their attacks a boost, right? And add secondary effects, right? Like, so, if you really want to use, like, a weird Pokemon, like Shuckle, maybe don't Dynamax Shuckle, but, like, you can do stuff with most Pokemon. You can find something creative to do, right? I think I could win with any Pokemon and bring it to the match, even Caterpie, right? Although, that would be difficult to have it actually do something useful, but who knows, right? I don't know. Anyway, I think that's all I want to say. Thank you for watching. If you like this kind of video, let me know, because it's a little bit outside what I normally do, but I figured it could be interesting to talk about. So, yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.